That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
I am wearing the same shirt as my Idam video because I had a lot of time on that plane, so I got a lot of reading done. I have The Sailor of the Sea of Fates, Elric story, 1976, which means this is another story which is not written publication-wise next, which makes for some awkward viewing. Now, I gotta admit, I think this story is kind of mid. Maybe I'd appreciate it more in a second viewing. It is just fine. This is another story where Elric is not going back to the main plot, I feel is the main plot, which is going back to his home place and figure out the whole thing with his cousin. But regardless of that, this has to do a lot with the multiverse, which Micheal Moorcock was doing before it was popular. He was doing it before Stephen King. He was doing it before the MCU, and he was doing it before the Cosmere. He was one of the first, if not the first, to do so. I guess Conan, I guess Robert E. Howard would have done it too, I suppose. So we'll give it to Robert E. Howard, but it's not really a multiverse, more so just a connected universe. But regardless of that, we are getting a lot of these things here, especially with this story. Elric meets these other characters that I've never heard of before, but they have their own stories, their own books, their own short stories of this idea of the Eternal Champion, which they are all meant to be on this sea voyage. But they basically go on this adventure together, and then this is also the first time we get hints of that maybe Elric isn't completely in control of the sword as he believes himself to be. And that is pretty much the gist of that. I feel the story, the concepts and everything are really fun. It's really interesting. But again, I'm going based off of what, the most recent collection did for these, putting them all in the chronological order. And it's not written the best. It's kind of clunky. It's kind of confusing. And it just the flow doesn't work because of this whole thing of it being written after, but then also this whole multiverse stuff that even by the end, I mean, Elric loses his memories of most of the events because he's not allowed to know this stuff yet because he's got to wait for future stories to know this stuff. So it just comes across as, why did we bother doing this? I guess just for a big Avengers crossover event, but that really only applies if you've read all these stories, which I've only read Elric, so it doesn't really have that appeal for me. But I'm not saying it's bad by any means. It was still solid. I've personally enjoyed it more than any of the Conan stories I've read, except for maybe the Elephant one, the Elephant Tower. But outside of that, I do enjoy it. It's just not. It's too clunky. I don't think it should have been here, or it's not even that. It's just no matter where you place it, it just doesn't really work for me. So this is gonna be my first, like, I guess, kind of mid story for him, in my opinion. But I mean, should you read it? I mean, if you got the collection, you might as well. But I don't know, man. I don't know how to feel about this one. But that being said, it does introduce some concepts that will matter for later on, and it was rather heart-wrenching, the scene with the sword. So, but we'll get to that in spoilers. If you don't want spoilers or anything else, time to get out of here. So, moving forward, we have Elric is taking up jobs as a mercenary. He's recently assumed to be a spy. He meets these characters named Ericus and Corum. They go on this pirate ship which can traverse planes, the multiverse, this Eternal Champion idea. They go on this adventure together. And then he kind of gets separated from them at some point in the story. He ends up meeting up with these other people. And at some point during that, he calls upon this demon to help him. But the demon says, no, I can't help you unless you give me blood. That's how this works. And he says, I need your help now. And he won't listen. His sword takes control for him and slices it into his own friend. And so then he's surged with power. And some guy that feels as if he's just been betrayed by his friend Elric comes charging at him. And he also just instinctively slices him too, with him falling dead. And so then the demon finally comes and helps him, even though he killed the people he was there trying to help. And it is the first sign that maybe Elric is not as in control of himself as he believes himself to be, not while that sword is in his scabbard. And so that was quite a haunting way to end this story. Of course, he, again, everything with the multiverse and these other Eternal Champions is blatantly forgotten by him by the end of the story because he's not allowed to chronologically know that yet. So it's a bit of a convenience there. And like I said, overall, the story's fun. It's a bit clunky. It's a bit out there. If you like it, you'll really like it. But I couldn't be a fan of it. We haven't really had a straightforward plot since the first one. That was the third story publication-wise of his origins. But I guess I just need a little bit more of that flair. This multiverse stuff, I need it as it's coming naturally. And again, this isn't necessarily his fault. He would have written this later, but I think even still, if you read it later, it may be cool because I'd understand it better, because I'd understand who these people are. But it would still feel weird that this is meant to be like in this between this time where he's just kind of traversing the world. I just don't. It just felt like, well, here's another story that I can use, but I can't use it near the end because I don't know what happens to Elric at the end of this, but. So I got to put it earlier. So I just kind of did that, and I just don't know if I really vibe with it. But it was still fun. I'm not saying it's horrible by any means. I had a lot of fun reading it, and I definitely do think it's worth your time to check out. But I guess mileage may vary, I guess, is what I suppose there. But that's pretty much it, guys. I think Elric's next. Maybe Conan's story. It's been a while since we did Conan. I got to give that boy some love. So I guess we'll see what happens. But until next time. Don't let your sword kill your friends, please. It's not a fun time for anyone. Anyway, bye-bye.